Hello! Once Upon a Time in Venezuela has been officially selected into International Creative Documentaries Selection of the FIFDH this year. So we're going to talk today with its director, Anabel Rodríguez Ríos, Venezuelan director. The film was shot during 7 years in Congo Mirador, a little village near the Caribbean Sea. It's a film that we immediately selected because it marveled us. Its camera, its lighting, its editing, the characters, everything is absolutely marvelous in this film, and we hope you'll enjoy it. So it's really a pleasure to be today with Anabel. Hello, Anabel. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, and after these words, I'm really honored to be here with you.
It's such a pleasure. Where are you today? Are you in Venezuela or in Europe? I know you live in Vienna, right?
I live in Vienna, and I'm in Vienna right now, and I travel quite often to Venezuela.
So Once Upon a Time is now a favorite for the Oscars 2021, which is amazing because it's actually a debut feature. It's your first feature film. Why did you embark in this journey? What triggered your hunger to do this film?
Well, so mainly it's a mix of deep feelings of, first of all, pain, because as you all might know, Venezuela is a devastated country. And that means devastated families, separated families, and so on, because of a really complex socio-political situation. It's difficult to say that it's only because of a totalitarian system. It's a mix of things and a structural fall down. So then it was, first of all, because of that, and mixed with a deep love as well, because for many years I don't actually live in Venezuela, as many people have been forced to migrate, maybe not in such a dramatic situation as most of the people. So we're talking of 3 million people that have been really dramatically forced to leave because of lack of food, etc. This is not my case, but still, it has much to do with these two things: pain and love.
Yes, you live yourself in Europe, as do so much Venezuelans, and also the artists. Most or many Venezuelan artists live in exile or in foreign countries. How does that affect the way that the cinema is shaped, and documentary cinema is shaped in Venezuela?
Well, right now and for some years, most of the filmmakers, which is what I can better talk about, we are pariahs in the world. Yeah, like as professionals, we really lack of structures. So after 3 years or 4 in which this situation is really chronic, we are beginning to make networks among us, and there is, yes, few of us that have made some international experience. But for instance, me and the group of work with which I do work, it took us 7 years to try to understand how this moves, and to send 100 applications, out of which 80 are rejections. And so then it takes a time of learning, and now we are ready to pass on this information to the rest of filmmakers. But as you well say, it's not only filmmakers, it's artists, and generally the intellectuals of the country are out of the country.
But let's go back 8 years ago when you started shooting Once Upon a Time in Venezuela. How did you arrive in Congo Mirador? At what moment did you decide to make a film? And did you know at the time that it was going to be a feature film?
No, I work in Congo Mirador since many years, actually since 2008, like well before the feature film, the shooting of the feature film. And back then, I was shooting a documentary for television, Televisión América Latina, with some producers that I still work with, that they are settled in Sao Paulo. And back then, the reason why we went there is that as Venezuelans, we've been very determined by the fact that we are producers or mono extractors of oil, and this is what the country had lived from for decades. And it is a question for many of us artists to try to understand what does it mean. Why as well is there such a big contrast between the fact that there is this oil extraction industry and so much poverty. So Maracaibo Lake is especially good to see like right in front of you, because you have the oil industry, and right next to it you have communities like Congo Mirador. So then this was the main first question, and then years later I did have the opportunity to get deeper into
exactly, because Congo Mirador itself is drowning under the sedimentation, pollution. So it's obviously a metaphor of Venezuela itself. But then the film really, you took the grip of the film when you met the two characters of the film, Natalia and Tamara. One is Chavista and the other one supports the opposition. And when you know how Venezuela is so polarized politically, either you're for or you're against Chavez, it's a marvel that you managed to shoot and to gain the trust of these two women that are completely opposed. How did you manage to have them both on camera?
Yeah, well, this took years. First, I was shooting with Natalie, the teacher of the only school of Congo Mirador, and that took 2 years approximately. And in the third year, the house that we were living in, this house was moved of the village precisely because people are leaving as it's becoming a swamp. So then in that moment, we proposed, Tamara, could we please stay in your house and then we pay this hosting? And it was really business that took us there. And Tamara is, first of all, a businesswoman. And as a filmmaker, I mean, filmmakers, I think we're these greedy creatures that we do anything to get what we want to get and we want to capture. So and that's how we began to be there. And I would say that at the beginning, of course, we were in one position and much in as well, radicalized and far away and a little bit angry or very angry, I would say. But after the years of shooting there, it took 2 years to shoot Tamara, or more, 3 years. This relationship did change. And with this change, it was possible to see, to have more empathy and more openness, to try to understand her motives and so on. So then it was actually a great human journey to get a little bit further from, the moral principles, and to try to understand the human being that was in front of us.
And obviously you are a woman, you're a strong woman, such as Tamara and Natalia, and I'm sure that helped you gain confidence with them. It's actually, the film is about 3 strong women, yourself and the 2 protagonists.
I thank you. Yeah.
But also about the film, it's not, we're talking about the film with pollution, drowning, desperation, but I don't think it was such a sad film in its way, because I couldn't help but think of 100 Years of Solitude of Gabriel Garcia Marquez and the village of Macondo. There is a dimension of the film that is also very, there is poetry, there is joy, there is hopes and utopias among the chaos and the disaster.
Yeah, totally. And for us, it was as well an image, Gabriel Garcia Marquez world or Juan Rulfo's world, during those years. One of the reflections was that these guys, these writers are more documentary filmmakers or documentary writers than anything else, because it looks like as if they were just making chronicles of things that are actually there. And I think as well that this image of the solitude of rural villages in Latin America is quite common. And I guess it is because the whole region is being somehow, put into the rail of being a certain type of countries that tend to be more like providers of resources. And that means that many people leave these villages, isn't it? So then this solitude of the villages, I think, is something deep, partly because of that.
And with this film, you managed to bring this completely secluded region to the world. We all discovered Congo Mirador and the region of Maracaibo. But on the other side, I read that you were planning, obviously, to organize screenings of the films also in Venezuela and to bring this film to the people around the region and in Venezuela. The film was released in Sundance in January 2020, and then the COVID happened. What happened? Did you manage to organize the screenings?
Oh yes. Well, the film has been all over the world, and now between February and March, there is this gap in the Venezuelan dynamics, and this is that the confinement has some certain flexibility in some ways, and within those gaps, we're showing the film between February and March with the support of IDFA. It is going to be possible for us to make screenings for free in open and public spaces. And this is a whole odyssey because it depends on how the community allows us to be there, but as well the authorities. So then it's a whole pulse diplomatic negotiation. But yeah, the idea is to go into several cities with a truck, with some subsidized petrol into the truck and these inflatable screens, and to show them in squares, several squares in several cities.
I can't wait to see pictures of that moment. And
Me too.
And how are the people there right now? Because Venezuela was already starving before the COVID pandemic. How did it affect these people? How are Natalia? How are Tamara going? How are doing?
Well, they are not struggling big time. It has happened in the economy that it is a dollarized economy. So then you buy mostly like everything, I would say, with dollars in cash. So then this had meant that in the last months, some people had accommodate within that. And I have to say that Tamara is this kind of character that she falls standing, whatever she falls is this person that, so then she's doing more or less well within this dollar economy. However, no, Natalie is struggling big time. Several things, like for instance, to get petrol is a big theme. To have a public transport is a big theme. For the food, I mean, all of that is.
How ironic that you cannot get petrol in Venezuela, right?
And in Zulia state that had given petrol not only to Venezuela, but it's been the fifth provider of the U.S. for decades, And yeah, there is no, it's a total thing to get. Actually, we're importing the petrol.
Exactly.
We're importing the petrol these days.
And the human rights situation is obviously very gloomy too. And I heard you told me also that you're working with human rights defenders right now on a next project.
Oh, yes. We are getting ready to shoot a short film about a radio called Humano Derecho, human right, yeah.
Human right?
And
radio, yeah.
In this radio, human right, Humano Derecho, and it's a radio that is open for human rights defenders organizations. That there are, dozens of them. This is very interesting that within the situation of Venezuela, there has been a proliferation of this kind of organizations and of foundations as well that deal with the humanitarian emergency. And in the particular case of human rights defenders, they have in that radio a home, and among other things that they do is that they record their records with protests music, like punk music or hardcore, or and this is going underground within the city. So then we are very enthusiastic about doing something about that, because it really brings up a spirit that is like a spirit that doesn't surrender into the sorrow that the situation brings, but that still keeps on going. And one of the most hopeful things is that there is a whole generation that they have been born into the times of when Chavez was a president. So, and they're really young guys, yeah. And most of the people that are into this kind of movements are these kids that really don't have a reference of another historical moment, and they are somehow. I find that they are somehow free of many prejudices that the society have had before, and that I hope that they are getting ready to build, a prosperous society for all of us.
Can we listen to this radio? What's the website?
Oh yes, humanoderecho.org.
Humanoderecho.org, the punk human rights radio. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And let's finish with one ritual question. Do you think cinema can trigger change?
I hope. We are working for that. This film, for instance, we are, for instance, in this space with you in the Human Rights Festival of Genève. I hope that this is a gesture of companionship into these kind of spaces in which these themes are discussed. And we are focused this year into bringing the film into these kind of spaces, but as well to accompany discussion spaces into Venezuela. When we show this in squares, the idea is to open space for dialogue amongst people, because this is one of the things that are really missing, spaces for debate and in which people feel more or less safe and that can actually talk. So in that sense, of course, I have to hope. We're trying to do something about it as well. We are using the film to accompany spaces in countries in which the Venezuelan refugees is a theme, a social theme. For instance, Colombia, there we want to do exactly the same, go into squares and so on, and to do like a grassroots work. And let's see what happens at the end of this year or 2 years. Let's evaluate to see if this I guess that it gives a little bit, it gives a grain of help into that direction. Probably it doesn't solve the situation, that is much more structural, but I hope that it helps to twist something in the mind.
But the grain is a seed, and the seed becomes a plant, and then the plant becomes a tree. So
yes,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Anabel. It was a pleasure to be with you. And so this was the discussion about Once Upon a Time in Venezuela, and don't hesitate, you have all the information on our website, FIFDH.org. Thank you.